Okay, well, I just thought this would be a really pretty location. Hope that you can hear me well enough. Dogs are just running around doing their little thing, and I'm going to do my little thing right after my chair finishes engaging. Let me get just a little closer. I want to make sure you can hear me. So when I did my 10 things you may have not known about my homestead, I mentioned having sheep, and I thought I would talk about that a little bit. So I had sheep, oh goodness, many years ago, and let me tell you how it started. So when we moved out to our homestead, it was in really rough shape. The house was in really rough shape. The yard and everything was, and the fields were covered with blackberries and poison oak, and just generally a mess. But we had 2 1/3 acres of land, and I wanted to utilize that. So I told my husband, who was living over the coast at that time, that I wanted some sheep. And so I assumed that when he came to visit, fencing would go up. Well, I assumed wrong. Fencing did not go up. And so finally I just said, because he was actually hauling sheep for somebody, moving them from location to location, I decided that I wanted him just to bring the sheep. And so he brought 3 sheep for me, 3 bummer lambs actually. And I was really happy about that. And we had to tie them out at first. Now, tying out is not a very good idea because they can get tangled up in everything. In fact, if there's anything to get tangled up in, they will get tangled up. There go the dogs. And mine did. In fact, one of them I had got up in a maple tree. I don't know how I got the branch down. And I pulled this branch down that was very long and almost willow-like. And I tied the rope to that, thinking, no way can my sheep get injured now. So that seemed like a great possibility to me, and it worked really well for several days. The sheep could just go in a great big circle, and it was perfect. But one day, something in that middle of the circle was sticking up. It wasn't sticking up very far, and my lamb managed to get his rope wrapped around that. And by the time we got out, my lamb was dead. So that made a big priority. Let's get these fences going, which we did. It was great. So we had the eastern field, and we had what I called the barn field, and then we had the backyard. That's what we used. And I would rotate them from place to place so that they could always have nice grass. Something I want to say about sheep is I really thought more, because I didn't really know anything about sheep when I got them at all. So if you're thinking about getting animals, maybe researching a little bit would be a good idea instead of jumping in with both feet like I did. But sheep do not just eat grass and low-lying things. They're kind of related to, or have habits similar to a goat. They like a little bit of everything. So they'll eat some grass for a while, then they'll try to eat some leaves off any brush they can find. Then they will eat some bark. And that's despite the fact that I also fed them some grain and I kept out a mineral block. So they just like a variety, I guess, kind of like we do. uh, which was really great for certain things. Within a very short period of time, because we had already cut down, we meaning my husband and my sons, had cut down all the blackberries and all of the poison oak, because I am extremely allergic to poison oak. And they'd got that all burnt up is what they did. I went to town while they were burning it because the smoke would affect me and I would have a bad case. So they did that over a period of time. Well, when any little tiny shoot began to pop up out of the ground, the sheep love that. So that was the end of having blackberries and poison oak on my property. Wonderful benefit. I loved that. The part I did not love so much was when they would begin ringing my trees. So ringing a tree is when they will eat around and make a full circle around the trunk of your tree. And they will go clear into the cambius layer. And when that happens, the tree can no longer bring nutrients up from the ground and your tree will die. I lost 2 beautiful old fig trees that were on my property when I first got there. That was a big disappointment. So trees and sheep did not go along so well. After a while, my flock began to grow, and it really grew a lot. Most of the time, I would have about 12 sheep, which was plenty on my property. But at one point, I got up to 24. Now, they would have babies, and that was really fun. And in fact, I got to help pull a lamb one time when a ewe was struggling. Although I will tell you the most embarrassing thing. So I was by myself, and I knew she was having trouble. Sorry, my eyes are itching. So I washed my arms way up, way up, because I knew I was going to have to insert my hand into her and find the feet to begin pulling that lamb out. I had never even seen anybody do this. So when she was laying down, I went to reach inside of her, but I was confused because it didn't dawn on me that there would be 2 openings, her rectum as well as the vagina. I guess that's just because I'm a woman and I never ever thought about that. That wasn't any of my concern. So I almost stuck my hand up her rectum. That would have just been awful. I just would not have liked that at all. Not that I was real thrilled with the other area, but at least I was going where I needed to. So that's just kind of a funny story. We had great success with our sheep when they would lamb. I only lost in I think about 6 years of having sheep, only really lost a couple little lambs, and that was pretty good actually. One ewe we almost lost. Now that was one of the first ones that was born, and she had a baby, and that was great one evening. And I had no idea that there was a twin in there, and she did not have that baby that night. In fact, she did not have that baby the next morning. But when I went out in the morning, she was down, and it was really terrible. I was working at that time at a little Seventh-day Adventist elementary school, and I had to get to work. So I had my husband load her up in the truck and take her to the vet. Now, that lamb was one of them that had expired. It was just in that birth canal too long. And the ewe almost died because she became toxic. So lots of antibiotics later, and having to bottle feed that baby some because she was on antibiotics. But then they both survived. So that was good. So we had white sheep and Suffolks primarily. Come here, Ruby. Why are you crying? Come here, come here. And she's whining. And they were really nice. So they had black heads and white bodies. Okay, go on. And then one day, it was the coolest thing. My daughter-in-law and son, Sierra and Stephen, were living with us. Get out of here. And Sierra went out in the outside early in the morning. She came running back in saying, Maria, there's a black lamb out there. Well, by this time we'd had sheep for about 5 years and we'd never had a black lamb. And so I thought she was kidding, and I went out and we had the most beautiful little black lamb. So that was really funny. And after that, every year we got some black lambs. I'm not sure what really made the difference, but we had beautiful lambs. I learned how to band them. So that would be when you put a rubber band. You have a machine that opens up and it'll stretch out a rubber band. And I would band both their tails to dock their tails short. That helps keep them cleaner. And the testicles of the babies, males, that I didn't want to turn into a ram, of course. And that was pretty hard for me to do in the beginning because it just seemed mean. And once in a while you would do it, and it was just the most pitiful thing. And the little lamb would be standing up and doing fine, and as soon as you let go of that, release that rubber band, they would just conk on over, lay on the ground, and you know, that felt awful to me. Then in just a minute they were back up and running around like nothing had ever happened. So that was interesting. I should have let my dogs run more. They're just hanging out by me. Anyhow, so lots of adventures with the sheep. They came to me whenever I would call them. And I would always say, come, 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 come. And they would come running. Now, like I said, the first ones had been bottle babies, so they were very tame. And then after that, they had their own mothers, but they were still tame because the mothers were tame. What else can I tell you about the sheep? I had 3 different rams over the years. So the first one we named Rambo. And I liked him, but he would escape. And so one day he escaped and he took off down the road. Must have been during the night. And people actually saw him up at the Tiller store. Now that is about 7 miles from my house. And he was just walking along the side of the road like he belonged there. And so people began asking and found out that he was mine. Well, so we went ahead and we gave him to one of Jason's friends. And Jason's friend kept him, but he was a bottle baby and he wanted a lot of attention. So he began ramming the front door of their house. That wasn't too exciting. And then one day he took off and they really thought that he was dead. You know, we have bears, we have cougars in our area. He could have just got tangled up in blackberries. But after about 2 months of being on the loose, in the woods, he showed up. He showed up at the little Tiller store. Now that was about 2 miles from where, not store, elementary school. That was about 2 miles from where our friend lived. And the kids were out there with this big old ram, and they were petting him, and he was loving getting the attention again. But the teachers were very concerned, and rightly so. They were afraid that Rambo would hurt them. At the time, I was naive enough that I thought, no, he's always been a good one, and they were perfectly safe. And they were safe until Rambo was picked up. Nobody got hurt. He was just enjoying the attention. And he kept him. Well, wasn't very long, and he took off again on another walkabout, I guess. And this time, he no longer wanted to keep him either, because he was, a rambling rose. So another one of my neighbors got him and kept him for several years as his ram. And he had better fencing, so he never got out. So I loved having the sheep. And in my next video, I'm going to tell you why I no longer have the sheep. All right, you have a wonderful day. God bless you in your house, out of your house, in the day and in the night, and whatever you do, keep dreaming.